Well, first off, the band. Going to Normandy to represent our country. Congratulations. It's really not only an extraordinary honor for you and for your families, but it's an extraordinary honor for our state. And we're thrilled that you're going to be going there, and I know it'll be an experience that you'll never forget. So congratulations, and thanks for coming today. I don't normally get played in by a band. This is really good. So thank you. Thank you all for coming. Everybody else, thank you for being here today, too. I appreciate it. It's good to be back here in Old Bridge. I have a lot of old friends here, people who have been working hard over the course of the last number of years to try to make sure that things are not only better in your community, but better in the state. So thank you for being here. Mayor, thank you for the introduction and for the welcome here. Senator Thompson is here. Senator, thank you very much for your support in Trenton on a regular basis. He's doing a great job for all of you. So this is my 134th town hall meeting since I became governor in January of 2010. I started to do these town hall meetings, and I continue to do them now for one really simple reason. It keeps me in touch with you. My life as governor becomes a bit different than it was before you became governor. Even after 5.5 years, it's often difficult to get used to. You know, I mean, this weekend, for instance, like everybody else, you know, you've got errands to do, you've got things to do with your kids, and you got to go around and do all that stuff that you don't get to do when you're working during the week. When I do that stuff, I don't get to just drive to the dry cleaners, you know, go pick up my shirts or go to the deli or go to the bank. I go with an entire group of people. The state troopers come with me everywhere. And I know they're doing their job and they're keeping me safe and all the rest of that, and that's their job to do, and I appreciate what they do for me and for my family. But what happens is, you know, when they're standing around with those wires in their ears and guns, you know, I become less approachable, I think, for most folks. And it gets a lot harder for you to get and hear from the people that you work for every day what's really on their minds. And so I noticed this right from the beginning, because this stuff starts, as you know, like the minute you're elected. You know, and I was in the Parsippany Hilton in November 2009, and the networks all called the race for me, and I went to step out of the hotel room to go down and see the lieutenant governor-elect and congratulate her in her room. And there were three troopers standing outside the door. I said, hey, guy, they weren't there when I walked in. I said, guys, how are you? Good to see you. I said, good to see you, sir. I said, okay. I said, I'm just going down to Lieutenant Governor-elect's room. And they said, yes, sir. So I turned and I looked behind me. They were following me. And I said, no, guys, don't worry about it. She's right next door. I'm just going to her room. They go, of course, sir. I said, good. I kept walking. They kept walking. And they've been walking with me ever since. And so right from the beginning, I knew that there would be some disconnect potentially between me and the people that had just elected me. So I wanted to make sure I did these town hall meetings and did them regularly so that I could hear from the folks who elected me as frequently as possible. And so this is now the 134th time for me to do this, and I enjoy it. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the stuff that I think is really important and in the news right now. And then after we finish that, I'll take questions from you on anything you want to talk about. So you see these banners we have up here talking about spending and where we are as a state. Let me just say this. A lot of good things have happened over the last 5.5 years to start to get things under control. For instance, we're spending $2.5 billion less today in discretionary spending than we did 8 years ago in fiscal year 2008. And that's not projected growth or all this like crazy math like they do in Washington. This is real dollars, $2.5 billion less today in discretionary spending than we spent 8 years ago. And what's discretionary spending? Discretionary spending is everything the state spends other than on pensions, health care, and debt service. Everything else, we're $2.5 billion less. We said we were going to make government smaller when we ran 5.5 years ago. We have 8,500 fewer employees today on the state payroll than we had the day I walked in as governor 5.5 years ago. We said that you had had 115 tax and fee increases in the 8 years before I became governor. 115 tax and fee increases from the state in the 8 years before I became governor. We said we were going to stop that. And so in 5.5 years, we've had no tax increases at the state level. In fact, we vetoed 4 different income tax increases, some business tax increases, to make sure that we didn't make it even more expensive to live here and more difficult to operate a business here over that period of time. And at the same time, we've done all that. We've increased aid to education to now over $12.5 billion a year out of a $33 billion budget. More than a third of the budget goes right back to school boards across the state to support K-12 education. We spend more today in state dollars on aid to K-12 education than we ever have in the state's history. So we've set priorities. Our hospitals have been funded well. More people receive health care today than have received it before, and at a more affordable price. So in every way that you can look at the budget, we've done exactly what we wanted to do to try to keep expenses reasonable. Now, but there's just 3 areas where that has not held true. And let me tell you, this year, what we're projecting for fiscal year 16, that starts July 1st, is that we'll have an extra $1 billion in revenue coming into the state government, an extra $1 billion in revenue without any tax increases at all, because more people are employed, 180,000 now new jobs created since we became governor in the private sector. Unemployment's gone from 10% down to 6.4%. So with all those more people working, they're paying taxes, and we're getting more in revenue. So with $1 billion, what are we going to do with it? Well, we can't make any choice of what we're going to do with it. I'd love to cut taxes for people in New Jersey with that extra $1 billion. We can't. I'd love to invest more in our higher education system so that tuitions stay reasonable and that our children are not burdened with extraordinary debt when they leave college like they are today. We can't do that. I'd like to invest more in services for folks around the state who deal with members of their family who have developmental disabilities. And while we're doing more of that, we're not doing nearly as much as I'd like to. I'd like to invest more in drug rehabilitation therapy because I really believe that it's a disease and that people need to be treated and can be treated for that disease. But can't do that either. See, because the entire $1 billion, all $1 billion of it, is being taken up by pensions and health care for public sector workers. All of it. Every nickel of it is being taken up by that. And if you look at what we're looking towards in the future, it's only going to continue in that way. So the fact is, we're not being able to make choices anymore for ourselves. These choices are being made for us. And let's talk about that for a second, particularly in the area of health care and health insurance. Now, the Obama administration, not me, the Obama administration characterizes the health insurance that we provide to public employees in the state of New Jersey as Platinum Plus. Platinum Plus level of health care. What's that mean for the everyday person? Well, before I talk about what those benefits mean, let me tell you what they cost. Those benefits cost over $31,500 per employee per year. That's on top of their salary. The health benefits alone cost $31,500 a year, and the taxpayers pick up $26,500 of that cost for every public employee in the state. What's that mean on an even bigger scale? Under Obamacare, they said for what they call Cadillac health plans, which is what ours clearly qualifies as by the Obama administration definition, that if you continue to provide those health care plans at that level in 2 years from now, in fiscal year 2017, that whoever does it, whether it's a private employer, a union, or a government, you have to pay a fine to the federal government for providing what they consider to be excessive health insurance. That's the way they pay for Obamacare. Well, the fine to New Jersey if we continue at this level of providing health care, a check the state government has to write to the feds is $750 million. That's $750 million of taxpayer money that goes for nothing in New Jersey. But just because we've decided that our public employees have to have Platinum Plus health care. By the way, the average health care for those who get it in the country through their private employer is at the gold level, not Platinum Plus. And if we provided that at the gold level, we'd have to pay no fine to the federal government. That's an acceptable level of health care under Obamacare. So imagine that we're going to have to find another $750 million that we're not spending today in order to pay this fine, because I guarantee the federal government's not going to take an IOU. They want the check. And so we're going to have to pay that. Add to it what's happening with pensions. Now, the fact of the matter is that over the course of a long period of time, two things have happened. Promises have been made on pensions for a richness of benefit that we simply can't afford. And second, the politicians on both parties who have made those promises and executed on them came up with no way to pay for it. They just made the promise that we'll pay for it someday in the future, someday. Well, someday's coming, everybody. Someday is coming. The pension fund has $80 billion in it today as we stand here. $80 billion sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But when you think that we write checks every year to pensioners in the amount of $9 billion, you all can do the math. You can't guarantee an 11% return every year on your money, which is what you need just to keep up. And so that fund will continue to get greater and greater in debt until eventually we won't have the money to pay the pensions. And it's the fault of lots of folks. It's the fault of those politicians who made promises and didn't pay for them. I can tell you that from my perspective, over the last 5 years, we will have made $4.2 billion of payments into the pension. Let me make you understand how that compares to my predecessors. That's in 5 years now, $4.2 billion. In the 15 years before that, under 5 different governors of both parties, they made a total of $3.4 billion in payments. So we paid $800 million more in 5 years than they paid in 15 years. And in fact, during that period of time, we had one governor who made no payments at all, borrowed money to put money in. And when that happened, the borrowing of money to put into the pension, the unions paid nothing for 2 years either. So everybody took a holiday for a few years. By the way, the checks were still being written, but nobody was putting any money in, not the employees or the employer. And so now we're trying to play catch up. Here's what you need to catch up. You need a $4.5 billion payment every year for the next 30 years to play catch up at the rate that we're spending. And right now, this year, we're proposing to make a $1.3 billion payment. So you're looking for another $3 billion. That's interesting because we have lots of folks who will say, and have said to me, Governor, just pay the pension, just make the pension payment. You know, reminds me of when I used to ask my mother for things when I was growing up. Go to the store with her and I'd say, can I have that? And she'd say, sure. Chris, you can definitely have it. Go home, go in the backyard, pick the money off the money tree, and then take the money back to the store, you can buy it. I'm like, Mom, there is no money tree in the backyard. She goes, that's right. There's no money tree in the backyard. The people who will yell and scream, just make the payment, let me make you understand what that means for everybody else who lives here. If we want to make that payment on a steady basis, if we want to make it just for next year, here's how much we'd have to increase taxes. Right now, you have to do one or the other of these. Right now, the sales tax is 7%. We'd have to increase the sales tax from 7% to 10%. A 10% sales tax, which would be the highest in the nation. Or, if you say, listen, Governor, don't do the sales tax because everybody buys things, and regardless of how much money they make, they have to pay the same tax. That's not fair. Let's do it on the income tax. Because then if you make more, you pay more, and that's fairer. Okay? For every person who works and pays income taxes in New Jersey, not just some, everyone, we'd have to increase income taxes 29%. 29% more than you pay now, and we have the third highest income tax in the nation. Now, listen, there's lots of people who'll make lots of arguments, but I don't think that the people of New Jersey will be able to afford to pay those things, nor should they be asked to do that. Fact is, there's ways to fix this. And last summer, I put together a commission of independent people, not political, not members of either party, folks who were experts in the pension area, and said, don't worry about anything. I'm not going to put any politicians on this committee. Just come back to me with how we fix it. They have a plan, and they presented that plan, and I'm supporting that plan, and the plan is pretty straightforward. It says a few things, and all of you who are involved in having some type of pension, whether you're in the private sector and you have a pension system, these are common sense things. First is to freeze new membership in the pension system. That all new employees go to a 401k type plan. That's what most of us in the private sector have. And let me add this for all of you, because I get people who yell this at me all the time. How much is your pension going to be? To cut your pension. Let me make it clear to you, I don't get a pension. The governor in New Jersey does not get a pension. Members of the legislature do, by the way. It's interesting. They make the laws. They say no pension for the governor, but pensions for us. It's good. But I get no pension, so I have a 401k plan with the state. I put a certain amount of money in out of my paycheck every 2 weeks. The government matches a small amount. And then when I leave the governorship, I get to take the money with me. Just like most of you do who have a job in the private sector. That's the way retirement works now. That's the way we save for retirement now. So first thing, freeze new membership in the pension system. Second is, in order to make the pension payment, let's bring that health care coverage down from Platinum Plus to Gold at every level of government, from your municipal government right up through the state government. If we did that, we'd save $3 billion a year. You take that $3 billion and you apply that to the pension system, which would bring that payment then up to $4.5 billion, and you could pay off that payment over time. And it would not require increasing taxes on the people in New Jersey. It would not require us to drive more jobs and more people away from here. And the folks in the public sector still get a gold level of public health, insurance, and unlike what some folks will yell at you, there's no cutting of the pension. They get the exact pension they were promised. And it doesn't increase their payment to the pension. So there's a way to do it. And we can do it. Last piece of it is, and this is for the future, I want to take that $80 billion and I want to give it to the unions. Take the politics out of this. Take politicians' hands away from that money and give it to the unions for their members so they can run it. We know that's what happens in the private sector. If you're in the electricians union and plumbers, pipe fitters, carpenters, iron workers, the union manages your pension. And your union leaders have the responsibility to manage it reasonably. And that's why in the private sector, when your pension doesn't have enough money, everybody's got to pay more. If healthcare costs go up, people have to pay more. It's only in the public sector where you go, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out some other way. If the guys in the private sector did that, they'd go to jail. So let's give the union members that money and take the politics out of it. Let the union members run their pensions and have control of their money for their members. Those are the elements of the plan. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward and direct. By saying that, I'm not saying it's easy. Because whenever you tell people they're going to get less of something, they don't like it. So you're going to get less health insurance coverage. They don't like that. But the fact is, I think we'll like it a lot less with a 10% sales tax. We'll like it a lot less with a 29% increase in the income tax. And that every nickel of that money that we're taking out of your pocket is not going to invest in New Jersey and make it a better place, to make education more affordable, to make health care more affordable, to grow jobs in the state, or to cut taxes. No, that money's all going to pay for what I call the 3 sins of the past. And they're only sins because we didn't pay for them when we were supposed to. Pensions, health insurance, and debt service. All those are things where we spent money, made promises that we had no way of affording, and said we'll push it off to another day. Let me also end with this. It's both parties. So don't let any Republican stand up here and tell you this is the Democrats' fault. And don't let any Democrat tell you it's the Republicans' fault, because they both have equally participated in it. And I've said to folks any number of times, I feel like the guy who was invited to dinner, right? But I was late, so I came in when dessert was being served. And then everybody else at the table got up and left saying they were going to the bathroom, but they never came back. And all I got was the check. All right? Now, I'm not complaining because I asked for this job. My wife reminds me of this all the time. When I come home to complain, she's like, no one put a gun to your head. You asked for this job twice. That's the way it goes. But that's the fact. And so don't let either party tell you that's the other guy's fault. By the same token, don't let anybody tell you that this problem is going to be fixed by taxing somebody else, because you're going to hear that argument coming soon. They say, listen, don't worry about it. We'll just tax the rich people. And if we just tax the rich people, they'll pay for it, and you won't have to worry about it at all. Well, remember this. We already have a millionaire's tax in New Jersey. They don't like to talk about that, but we do. We have a millionaire's tax already in New Jersey. Now, of course, it's New Jersey math, which is really great, right? The millionaire's tax starts at anybody who makes $400,000 a year or more. So you say, wait a second. Then why isn't it called a 400,000 heirs tax? Why is it called the millionaire's tax? Because millionaire's tax sounds better, right? So how do you sell that as your governor, right? You have a millionaire's tax where people make $400,000 a year or more. The only way I've learned to try to sell this is to say to people, listen, if you're not a millionaire, but you want to feel like one, come to New Jersey. Even if you're not a millionaire, we'll tax you like you're a millionaire. So you can tell your friends, hey, I'm a millionaire. Well, not really, but I get taxed like a millionaire, so treat me like a millionaire. What they're talking about in the legislature is to have a millionaire's tax surcharge. So this is to add to the millionaire's tax, which is now at 9%, and take that to 10.75%. Now, on its best day, its very best day, that'll raise about $500 million. We need $3 billion. So we need 6 of those to be able to do it, which of course would then raise the top rate to over 20%. No one's going to be able to do that. And by the way, the millionaires in the state, they kind of had enough too. January 21st of this year, a new report came out. Last year, 10,000 millionaires left the state of New Jersey just last year. This is not people who used to make $1 million, now make less. No. These are people who filed a tax return the year before and did not file one in New Jersey the next year. They left. They took their money and they went someplace else. Most of them to Florida. Why? Florida has no income tax. So if what we're going to do here is say, okay, you don't have to worry about it. Let's just tax the rich people. The rich people are already starting to leave because it's too expensive to stay here. And what's going to happen? The people who will be trapped here will be the people who can't afford to leave. And they're the ones who will have to shoulder the burden even more of the growing expense of paying for this stuff. So, I'd love to be governor in a time where we had more money than we knew what to do with. Money was flying in over the transom, and I just kept saying yes to everybody. You want that? Absolutely yes. You want that? Excellent. Yes, 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 yes. I'd love to do that. I can't. It'd be irresponsible for me to do it. And I've got 2.5 years left in this job. And I want to fix this problem before I go. Because if we do that, the state will be ready to be able to cut taxes. The state will be able to be ready to make it more affordable because we've dealt with all those other problems. This is the last one. This is the last big one we got to deal with from a fiscal perspective. So we need to get with it. So that's why I'm talking about it. Not because it's the most pleasant subject in the world, not because it's the most exciting subject in the world, but let me tell you, we're going to care. We're going to care because either if we don't do this, we're going to have to pay an enormous amount more in taxes and won't be able to afford to live here, and we'll have to leave. Or people who are counting on these pensions for their retirement will not have them. And don't let anybody tell you that's not possible either. Look what happened in Detroit. It happens. Look what happened in General Motors. It happens. And both of those instances, both those places were bankrupted by public pensions and health benefits. Remember one last thing, by the way, just to show you the scope of how big this is. The state, a number of years ago, decided to undertake paying for retiree teacher health benefits. Now, of course, the teachers never worked for the state. They worked for individual school districts. But one governor wanted to give something else away, so, we'll pay for the retiree teacher health benefits. This year, in this year's budget, the one we're currently operating under, to pay just for retiree teacher health benefits costs $1 billion. $1 billion. And climbing. And those charts will all show it to you. So, we have work to do. Now, I have work to do. My work is not only to talk about that, but to take your questions. So here we go.